Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever you are in the world. Thank you so very much for taking the time to attend Ignite. I hope it's been productive, it's been inspiring, and it's been helpful, most importantly. The session today is, we have asked the expert session for, how can you simplify work with low-code solutions within Microsoft Teams. I have my colleague Wes Lander, who is joining me, and he will help me with questions and answers. But just know that we have an army of experts with us on the call. So, please ask us questions and we'll try our level best to give you the answer that are helpful and can help you proceed with your work. With that, Wes, I'll pass it on to you. And I see before that, I should actually just quickly reiterate the Microsoft Code of Conduct. It's just primarily to say that, it is a Microsoft-sponsored event, and we really hope that we can keep the conversation respectful, friendly, and inclusive for all the participants in all our meetings and live events. With that, I'll pass it on to you, Wes.
Awesome. Like Karan said, welcome everyone. Excited to have you. Go ahead and start entering your questions into the conversation, and we will start to kind of work through those. Karan, to start off, one of the big things that we've been hearing about is this Project Oakdale. Could you tell me a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one, it's been exciting to see the kind of reception Project Oakdale and Teams announcement has received. So I think just to give context, we've been working very closely with our partners in Power Platform business to create tighter integrations with Teams, because that's where the work is happening. And one of the consistent feedbacks we'd heard from our customers, from our partners was, as more and more people are working in Teams every day, especially in light of remote work, it would be really helpful if people can actually create, manage, and deploy these apps and low-code bots right from within Teams. So you don't actually have to leave Teams environment to do that. So Project Oakdale is essentially the same. It helps resolve the same problem where, as a customer, you can create a low-code app or a low-code bot right within Teams and publish them, try them out within Teams for your respective teams. So that's the intent. It's a low-code environment, and it's basically backed by the similar sort of capabilities that people are aware from CDS, but all of that is happening within the context of Teams for Customers.
Awesome. Thank you. Might actually ask someone else to join in answering the question here. So I might kick it over to my colleague Pete to start off. There's a question: if you're starting something in Power Automate in automation and you build an automation, how is it then distributed to different members of the team?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it does depend on how the flow that you're building with Power Automate is triggered. So if this is something that could be triggered by really any teammate, like for example, if a message is posted to a channel, there's no action that's really required to allow those teammates to start to trigger that action. Now, if you would like for your teammates to be able to be co-editors or co-owners of that flow, there's an easy share button that's available in the Power Automate UI. And so just to the right of the flow that you're hoping to share with someone, you can go ahead and click that and then enter their name, or even like a channel of users.
Awesome. Thank you, Pete. Let's see, we have some more questions coming in. Karan, again, kind of going back to what we were talking about with Project Oakdale, could you let folks know when that's actually going to be available?
Yeah, so I believe the public preview for Project Oakdale is available from 22nd of September. So most of our commercial customers should be able to access that. And the way to do that is if you go to PowerApps or Power Virtual Agent app within your Teams. So if you just go to the Teams App Store and look for the PowerApps app or the Power Virtual Agent app, you should be able to do that and access Project Oakdale through that.
Awesome.
And it's all available in a public preview right now.
Awesome. Thank you. Maybe I'll kick it back over to Pete for this next one. Will every owner on a team be able to modify apps in flows by default, or do you need kind of explicit permissions to be able to share the app?
So the nice part about Power Platform in general is that you basically represent yourself, and you have to be given specific permissions for an app, for example. And so if I build an app with PowerApps, I would have to dictate who is the owner. So for example, who else could be a co-owner? So for example, Wes, if I want to make you a co-owner, I would have to go ahead and specifically assign that permission to you.
Awesome. Let's see, we have some more questions coming in. Karan, this is one that I think you can help with. So we have someone in the chat saying they're kind of new to PowerApps. They're looking for examples and how they can really get started. Could you give some suggestions there?
Sure, Wes. So this is one of the inputs that we've heard from a lot of people, that it is low code, and how to do it within context of teams is a new space. So as you can see on the slide, we have curated a rich set of stories across customers, across industries at the very top link. So the customer stories link at the very top can give you real examples of what others around the world are doing with Power Platform and Teams. Additionally, what I'll say is we have a rich documentation link as well. So you can easily go to aka.ms as Teams low code, where you'll be able to access all the sessions that we are doing in this topic. That will allow you to see some of the, how to build an app, how to build a bot, etc. in details as well. You can also see the links for all of these sessions in the slide that we are sharing. So there's a ton of documentation, there's a ton of customer stories, which will hopefully help you get started.
Great, thanks. Pete, I'll kick this one back to you. I think folks still are looking for kind of that confidence in terms of governance and things like that. So Andrew in the Q&A asked, are there governance capabilities around who can create PowerApps and Teams, so you can kind of make sure that maybe not every user in your organization is creating apps if that's what you kind of want?
Yeah, absolutely. So Teams admins have a lot of control over what apps can be exposed to their users. And this goes even beyond Power Platform apps. So you can create custom policies that will expose some or all apps to users. And so if you wanted to dictate which users could actually build apps with PowerApps, you would assign a policy to those users that actually enable the PowerApps app in Teams for those users. And if you just don't want other users to actually be able to go ahead and build PowerApps, then you could just disable that as well. So that policy ability gives you pretty granular control over who can go ahead and create these apps, if that's a concern.
Awesome, thanks. Keep the questions flowing in, everyone. Really appreciate what you have coming in here. I think we have a few more that I'd like Karan to address. Karan, could you talk a little bit about Power Virtual Agents licensing? I know that's really kind of new to this space, so could you let folks know like what they're getting and who gets it?
Sure. So one, I think with Project Oakdale, you'll be able to access Power Virtual Agent right within the context of your teams. The simplest way to think about it is most of the Office 365 and Microsoft 365 licenses, you can assume it includes Power Virtual Agent. I think F1 is the only one where I don't think that's included. So majority of the commercial tenants and licenses should be able to access PVA right in the context of Teams. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the one other thing that I'll just call out on that is if once you start using Power Virtual Agent in the context of Teams, you can also, if you need richer capabilities or a more high-end scenarios, you can easily start a trial from within the Teams as well for those premium capabilities.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see, we have some more questions coming in here. Pete, there's some questions around the environments that are created. Can you talk about how environments in this Oakdale context actually work, and how your apps and your flows work in the context of those environments?
Yeah, no problem. So the idea of Project Oakdale is that you can provide an environment to build apps and bots for every team. So when you actually start using PowerApps and want to build an app, for example, for your team, you're creating a new environment that's specific to that team. And so what that means is that the apps that you build in that environment will kind of be able to talk with one another, but they won't be able to interact with apps that you've built in another team, for example, or apps that you've built in the PowerApps UI that you might have built apps in previously. So that is one thing that I want to make clear to folks is you do have a separate environment for each team. With Project Oakdale, you are limited to one environment per team. If you wanted to step up to a full CDS experience, then you could expand that. But that is something that does require a separate Power Platform license.
Awesome. So there's a question then, kind of with that context of environments, Pete, I'll go back to you here. If you're creating that within that context of that team, what happens if you want to actually then utilize that across your entire organization or outside of the context of just that team?
Yeah, you'll also be able to pardon me, publish those apps, for example, that you've built for your entire organization. And so within the PowerApps UI, you can go ahead and publish that so that your users will be able to find them through the team's app store that would be built specifically for their environment, or excuse me, for their organization.
We have more questions coming in. So we have another licensing question. Maybe I'll kick it over to you, Karan, to start. If an app is built with a premium license, does everyone need a premium license to actually use that app?
I'll actually ask Pete to step in here because I think we have made some of the updates recently, so Pete might be closest to the details.
Yeah, so that's a good question. The Power Platform usage is gated based on how they're used. So yes, if you want a user to be able to access the premium services, they would need to be licensed to also use those premium connectors. So you would need more than just building a premium license to build the app itself. You'd also need a premium license to consume it if it did require access to premium services.
Sounds like we have a number of licensing questions coming in, so I'm going to stick with Pete as our licensing guru today. There was a question about Power Automate licensing and whether the quotas or quantity of flows that you're running with a premium license, whether those also count against limits for Oakdale and how that kind of works between the two.
So if I understand the question correctly, yes. So you have a predetermined limit of API calls that can be made with either a Power Automate service provided as part of an Office license. It's a slightly higher amount if you purchase a Power Automate license. But yes, the steps that are consumed in teams or out of teams would count towards that limit. And then once you start hitting that limit, you'll be throttled in your usage. But I should clarify that the limits that are put there are more around service level protection and not necessarily meant to be something that's overly restrictive. It's for scenarios where there might be someone who is accidentally built a bit of a recursive flow, and so in order to not completely inhibit the service, want to make sure that we're protecting the consumption there.
So continuing with licensing, someone is asking if they are just using a Power Virtual Agents app or a Power Virtual Agents bot within Teams. Does their E3 license cover kind of just the standard functionality? And maybe actually I'll throw that over to Karan.
Yeah, I think for, if I understood the question, this is specifically about Power Virtual Agents bots, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said in the some time ago, I think for most of the commercial, Microsoft 365 and Office 365 licenses, you should be able to create, manage, and deploy a bot right in the context of Teams with the project Oakdale. If you do need access to premium connectors or premium scenarios, then of course there's an opportunity for you to upgrade to a premium license.
Awesome.
Or start a trial right within Teams.
Okay, Pete, I have one for you here. So we used to always use for kind of seeded capabilities, SharePoint as the back end for PowerApps and a lot of Power Automate in the seeded capacity. Could you maybe explain where or how someone would differentiate between using an old or using the previous methodology of a SharePoint list as the seeded backend versus now using the Project Oakdale kind of CDS experience for their apps and workflows?
Yeah, sure. And I know we've talked about Project Oakdale quite a bit, but Project Oakdale is really a relational backend that provides data storage for Teams users specifically. And so it is what enables the new built-in PowerApps and Power Virtual Agents apps. So I'd say the biggest distinction I would make would be if you want to use that embedded PowerApps capability, the apps that you're building will be writing and reading from Project Oakdale and not SharePoint. Now, as part of your Office 365 or Microsoft 365 licenses, you do still have some PowerApps capabilities. If you want to go ahead and build an app in the PowerApps UI, you can still go ahead and write that data back to a SharePoint list. So I'd say that's probably the biggest distinction. There's some other functionalities that are slightly different, but that would be the biggest one that I would point out. So if you want to go ahead and build an app and deploy it to your team easily as part of this Project Oakdale experience, you would actually be required to use Project Oakdale as your backend in lieu of SharePoint.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. There's, again, more questions on licensing. How does the Power Virtual Agents licensing structure work for, and I'll ask Pete to answer this. How does the Power Virtual licensing structure work for external, like if I want to connect to services outside of Office 365, how does kind of the premium licensing structure work?
Yeah, the great part is that a lot of, since Power Virtual Agents is part of the Power Platform family, it can leverage Power Automate to connect to a lot of external services. And so the answer is that it simply follows the same logic as what Power Automate does. So if you want to go ahead and connect to a service that's outside of Power Virtual Agents, but still classified as a standard connector, you would not need a premium Power Automate license. If you did want to go ahead and connect the bot somehow to a service that does require a premium connector, that's when you would actually need to make sure that the users who are going to be leveraging that bot are licensed for with a premium Power Automate license that does give them that premium connector.
Awesome. Let's see. Okay. And I think there's, I've seen a number of questions here, Pete, about connectors for apps and automation and how that works with SQL or on-prem. Can you talk about when and how people would start to actually go on the journey of connecting beyond Oakdale and connecting to some of these other elements outside of Project Oakdale? What's kind of what's the how do we kind of look at that in terms of both licensing, mostly from a licensing perspective, but how do we actually kind of curate the connectors and things like that?
Yeah, so I'd say it's similar to the last question. The overall logic behind kind of what is classified as a standard connector versus what is classified as a premium connector is the standard connectors are really intended to kind of enhance your productivity scenarios. So they do connect to a lot of Office applications or productivity applications. The premium connectors are once you start trying to use the service to perform enterprise-wide functions and connect to a lot more external services, that's where you largely need to step into a premium license. So that's the logic behind it. Now, I'd say if you're curious, there's a great page that lists all of the connectors and services that Power Automate does support, and it will classify which ones are standard and which ones are premium, just to give it a little bit better sense of whether you're going to be able to accomplish the project that you wanted to on a standard license or if it would require a premium. Does that answer the question, Wes?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's kind of a continuation of that question. They have Ralph from Chicago was kind of talking about how he has a lot of folks on his team who are old SQL programmers, and wondering if they can start to maybe leverage some of that data. I've heard a bit over Ignite about API management. Could you maybe give us kind of some insight into what's coming there?
Yeah, that's for me, Wes.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's some new Azure API management capabilities that allow especially pro developers to build APIs and register them in the Azure API management. And then you could actually go ahead and use those connectors that you've built as part of your Power Platform solutions. So if you want to create an API, register an API management, and then when you're building a Power App, it will look just like another connector that you can go ahead and leverage. So that's one way where we're really tightening the linkage between professional developers and what some people call citizen developers, so that you can build even more powerful tools at the same time.
Awesome. Let's see, what else do we have going on here? I think, Karan, I'll send this one over to you. If people are looking for more information on how to get started, are there particular programs or are there ways that people can get more information if they're really just starting out on their journey of exploring Power Platform?
Yeah, thanks, Wes. Yeah, I think I would say three things there. One, we recently created a public technical documentation page, and so we can share the link with all of you. And that actually talks about Teams platform in totality, and the low-code solutions is a part of that. So I think that would be a really rich set of documentations for all of you. The second thing I'll say is, if you actually go to the PowerApps or the Power Virtual Agent apps within Teams today, we've actually included some built-in templates there. There's a bunch of resources on how can you easily get started. So I would just say, just go to the app and start playing around with it. And there's a bunch of resources within that experience that should help you. And then lastly, for partners, as you can see on the screen, there's a dedicated set of motions we have. So there are events called App in a Day, Flow in a Day, etc., where there's a full dedicated conversation around how to build these solutions and how to bring them in teams, etc. So there's a lot of rich content across, multiple properties where people can easily get started.
Awesome. And kind of a follow-up to that, Pete, I know a lot of times when I'm building apps or building a bot, sometimes I just need some inspiration. Can you maybe share some ways that the folks who might be a little more comfortable and familiar with building some of these solutions, can they go to really kind of get some ideas and get some juices flowing on what are the possibilities of Teams and Power Platform solutions together?
Yeah, so I think the first two links up on the slide that Karan is showing are really great for providing some inspiration. So the customer stories are always a great source of inspiration. I think we love to speculate about what our customers are going to do with these tools, but what they're actually doing is way more compelling. So check that out. And then in that second link under ideation materials, there will be links to all of the sessions that talk about Teams and Power Platform from Ignite, as well as a new Teams and Power Platform ebook that we recently published. And so that just walks through 6 different departmental scenarios that might benefit from this integration. So for example, if you're a marketing organization, how could you use a custom app, some automation, a bot, and a data dashboard in the context of Teams to really simplify the work that you and your organization are doing. And so there's some more details there. Like I said, 6 departments. Those are more meant just for inspiration and kind of get the juices flowing. But I think that they provide a nice primer for what's possible.
Awesome. I'd also love to give a shout out to the Power Platform communities that are out there. That's another great place to get ideas, bounce questions off of other people who are in the space who have maybe kind of run into the same issue as you before. It's a great place to go and get feedback, and that we do have a rich community that we support on the Power Platform side, and we love partnering with that community to talk about how Power Platform and Teams together can do even more. Let's see, I think we're running actually pretty tight on time. So Karan, if you have any last words, closing words to share with the group, I'll let you take it from here.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Wes. And thank you for everyone for asking all these questions. It's incredible the amount of growth we've seen in how people have adopted and used Teams in the last few months, especially as remote work and hybrid workplace has become the de facto way of working. And we're really excited to see, we've historically just thought about Teams as just a tool for meetings and calling and chat, but increasingly we are seeing our customers using Teams in richer ways where they integrate apps and workflows and bots and teams. So we're excited to see what all is possible, and we want to thank you for engaging with us and pushing us to build better products, better campaigns. So looking forward to working with all of you, and have a lovely rest of the Ignite.